The August report of Sensor Tower's revenue data has just been released, and there's quite a bit to unpack. With out-of-nowhere titles like AFK Journey taking first in the rankings and Love and Deep Space taking second, we're seeing some massive decreases across many titles, with Hoyoverse games like Zenless Zone Zero dropping by tens of millions over the past month. Wuthering Waves, unfortunately, is another title that decreased in revenue during August, with a drop from 29.5 million all the way to 13.5. The first reaction to this data could easily be shock or disappointment. With all the incredible quality of life updates and gameplay optimizations Kuro has made since release, there's nothing players would have liked more than to see the continual growth in these revenue numbers across that time. However, when we dive into the situation surrounding August, its limited characters, and version 1.2 schedule, it's clear why these revenue numbers are the way that they are. Today we'll be breaking down why the Wuthering Waves August numbers were down, diving into the limited appeal of the featured character Jesa, the incredibly low incentives players had to actually spend across 1.2, and how teasers for future versions have had more people saving rather than spending, considering the appeal of the upcoming additions to the roster. As always, if you're enjoying this content, please hit that like and subscribe button. The number one way that a gacha company makes money is through its limited 5-star characters and their signature weapon. Characters need to have a couple of key factors in their design to incentivize players to dig into their wallet and spend that cash on Lunite or packages in the store. Factors like a powerful kit with huge numbers, buffs and abilities that synergize with a large number of characters, or a very attractive design and playstyle that players want to be constantly looking at and experiencing within their gameplay. Jesa, unfortunately, only ticks off a few of these boxes. While a player's attraction to a character design is entirely subjective, there's no doubt from historical performances in the genre that certain character designs are a lot more appealing to the general populace than others. Jesa is undeniably more of a conservative design compared to the other limited characters we've seen. What this means is that much more of the pulling incentive is tied to the strength of her kit, her synergies with other members of the roster, and her overall feel and gameplay. When it comes to her kit, Jesa has fantastic numbers and unique gameplay that has her constantly shifting her position on the battlefield. She is, without a doubt, one of the most unique releases we've had. However, a core element of her design is that she is a sub-DPS. She needs another damage dealer on her team to make use of her massive buff to Glacio and Resonance skill damage. Unfortunately, this limits her synergies with characters on the current roster significantly. Her ideal teammates are Jianxi, another limited character, or Ling Yang, a standard 5-star. Jianxi is already mind-blowingly powerful, with incredible performance with budget options like Yanwu and previous limited releases like Yin Lin. And Ling Yang, he's already built up a reputation as one of the weakest characters in the game, so people really aren't pulling limited characters for him. What this means is that the main motivation for pulling Jesa is to take an S+ tier DPS like Jianxi and bump them up to S++, or pull her to buff a standard 5-star that already doesn't perform at the same level as his peers. Her use cases are very specific and require you to invest in either the weakest 5-star in the game or hyper-invest in the best DPS in the game who already clears content very easily without her. You can begin to see why a lot of people didn't pull for Jesa. When it comes to Jesa's weapon, it's also a very similar situation. With weapons shareable across endgame content like the Tower of Adversity, one of the biggest incentives to pull for a limited weapon, besides its guarantee, is how many other characters you can use it on. Jesa's weapon is beyond niche, with its boost to attack damage and rectifier roll making it usable as more than just a stat stick on only 2 characters in the game, Jesa and Encore. When Yinlin, a prior released rectifier sub-DPS, has a weapon with far more general buffs and activation conditions that's usable on many more characters, and actually better for Encore than Jesa's weapon, there's very little incentive to pull for Jesa's unless you want to hyper-optimize for Jesa herself. Factor in the niche role that Jesa plays on teams and the niche role of her weapon, you have a recipe for very low sales. That's unfortunately the big downside of sub DPS characters. They need somebody else to work with, and when the roster is as small as it is, their overall value isn't nearly as high as characters like Jianxi or Jian. Looking past Jeja's banner, it's time to address the elephant in the room. Almost nobody will be pulling on Zhang Liyao's character banner. With him being given out for free and his banner having some of the most unsynergistic characters possible for his kit, the main incentive for players on his banner is his sequence nodes, and not a lot of players will actively go for these. His weapon, on the other hand, is likely where most players will be directing their pulls. However, Zhang Li's weapon has some of the same issues Jeja's does. There's not a lot of great alternative users. You have Ling Yang, Johnson, or Yan Wu as the potential users, when Ling Yang is not a character players are actively building around, and the other two characters typically take on a support role with Rejuvenating Glow and the Originite Gauntlets. Zhang Li's weapon is going to be a bit more limited in its use than people might think. Even if Zhang Li is free, there is also still a negative stigma towards pulling on weapon banners in the gacha genre due to the horrifying experiences players have had in other games. And when his weapon is realistically only great on a standard 5-star character that nobody really uses, you'll be pulling this weapon just for Zhang Li. What this all means is that as we move into September and Zhang Li's banner, we might not be seeing a big growth in revenue numbers. There just isn't as much incentive to spend in version 1.2. There was also another big factor that contributed to these lowered August numbers, and that was the very early drip marketing Kuro released for characters like Shorekeeper and Yoo-Hoo. With all of the rumors floating around the role that these characters will play on future teams, it's undeniable that there's far more traction around these banners than those in version 1.2. Combine that with the fact that Shorekeeper ticks off a lot of the boxes when it comes to appealing towards the general populace of gacha players, you'll end up with a lot more people saving their pulls and digging into their wallets in version 1.3 instead. Overall, version 1.2 has been and probably will be Kuro's lowest revenue patch for the foreseeable future. With Jesa and her weapons very niche use cases in the current state of the game, Zhang Li being completely free, and the increased overall excitement for Shorekeeper and her banner, we shouldn't read too much into August's performance as a measure for Wuthering Waves' future. Shorekeeper will drop in the middle of September, so hopefully we'll see a big bump from her banner and sales. As always, if you enjoyed this content, please hit that like and subscribe button. Peace out.